Code of Honor by Gratz. A crash like a linebacker, cuddling with a quarterback woke me, and I shot straight in bed. I blinked at the clock beside me, trying to make sense of the world. Red numbers glowing in the darkness. 3:23. It was 3:23 in the morning. Why was I awake at 3:23 in the morning? I had a dream about the crushing sound. Kamran? My mom called from down the hall. Kamran, was that you? Are you all right? Thunder. No, footsteps. Feet pounding down the hall. Someone was coming for me. Half-remembered childhood nightmares seized me, and I scrambled backwards across the bed in panic, trying to get away from Voldemort, the Joker, the aliens, the demons. I fell on the floor with a thud, the bed covers coming with me. My legs were tangled in them. I couldn't kick free. And then they were there. Dark shapes surged into my room, black on silhouettes with hulking shoulders and big round eyes that flashed. My fear made me 5 again. I curled up against the bed like I was playing hide and seek with my older brother, Darius, hoping he wouldn't see me, but the demons knew where I was. They homed in on me like guidance missiles. Rough hands grabbed me, hauled me to my feet, threw me face first on the bed. Somewhere, remotely, I heard my mother scream, heard my father cry out. The demons had come for them too. Mom! Dad! I cried. I kicked and squirmed, trying to get away, but my arms were wrenched behind me and bound with a plastic zip tie that cut into my wrists. The hands pulled me up again, and I read the words out of the captors' uniforms. Police, Homeland Security. Reality finally overrode my half-awake nightmares. No, no, Darius is innocent, I cried. He's not a terrorist. You don't understand. They're making him do everything. The DHS agents wrangled a thick bag over my head, and that already dark room was completely black. No, please don't, I yelled. The black bag was closed, suffocating. My hot breath was damp on my face, and I started to panic. You can't do this. I was born in America. I'm an American citizen. The DHS agents ignored my protests. I kicked and thrashed as they dragged me from my room, down the hall, and out the front door. A few days ago, all I cared about was winning the homecoming game, getting into college, going on a date with Julia Gary, normal high school senior stuff. A few days ago, I had been king of the world. Now I was a prisoner of the United States of America. Chapter 1. A few days ago. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you East Phoenix High School's homecoming king and queen, Carmen Smith and Julia Gary. The crowd clapped and cheered, and Julia and I descended the steps to the dance floor. Julia clutched my arm like she was never going to let me go, and I grinned at her. I spied my best friend, Adam Collier, in the crowd. He gave me a deep, flourishing bow, like some duke at court, and I laughed. Even though Adam and I had joked around about the homecoming dance, I had to admit that being crowned king, especially alongside Julia, felt pretty amazing. When Julia and I got to the middle of the dance floor for our spotlight dance, the DJ played the old Green Day song, Time of Your Life. I put my arms around Julia's waist, and she leaned into me, laying her head on my chest. I am, I told Julia, tucking a lock of long hair behind her ear, having the time of my life with you. I didn't even care if it sounded cheesy. I meant every word. Julia stood on her toes to kiss me, which made my head tingle, like always. I loved Julia. There, I said it. I maybe hadn't said it out loud to her, but she had to know it. Julia was smart, funny, and way cute. We'd been dating for 2 months, and I didn't know what we were going to do when I left Arizona for West Point next year. But this was definitely not the right night to think about that. The DJ slid into a bouncing hip-hop song, and kids screamed onto the dance floor, hopping and waving their arms. Adam and some of my other football teammates and their dates surrounded us, shouting their congratulations. Double congrats, Adam said, punching my arm. He glanced around at our teammates. Did y'all know that there was a college scout in the game tonight? From the University of Colorado. Pac-12. That's big time. And Cameron put on a show for him. I shrugged and blushed. I haven't told anyone else about the scouts, not even Julia, because I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I was committed to going to West Point and playing for Army anyway, but it had still made me play harder. Knowing the scout was there in the stands, I'd had the best game of my high school career, scoring 3 touchdowns. I wouldn't have ran for all those yards without offensive line setting up, I said. The last touchdown was me just following Antonio into the end zone. Adam scoffed. Dude, you're too modest. This guy's going to the Super Bowl one day, he told everyone. Yeah, I don't think so. No, I mean it, Adam said. He pulled out his phone and brought up a photo. Found out on the table were 4 oversized silver tickets, each one a picture of Vince Lombardi trophy and Super Bowl 49 written across the top. We're going to the Super Bowl, amigo. If anything could make me stop dancing with Julia, it was that. I took the phone from Adam and stared at the screen. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. He got them? This year's Super Bowl was going to be in Arizona, right across the town in Glendale. Adam's dad was a big shot at Phoenix Bank, and he's put in some of the tickets that company got for being corporate sponsors. But Adam and I had never thought Mr. Collier would actually get them. Adam beamed. Yup, one for my dad, one for my mom, one for you, and one for you. I shook my head, still staring at the tickets. Beside me, Julia squeezed my arm. She knew how much I wanted this, but then I saw the price on one of the tickets, and my eyeballs almost popped out of my head. Each ticket was $700. I was looking at $2,800 worth of football tickets. Way more than if you considered what you could get for scalping them once the Super Bowl teams were settled. I handed the phone back, feeling sick to my stomach. I can't, I told Adam. It just about killed me to say it, but my dad was an assistant professor at Arizona State, and my mom worked at a horse ranch out in Appalachia Junction. There was no way I could afford a ticket to the Super Bowl. It's taken care of, bro, Adam said. Compliments to my family courier. Adam was an only child. I'd been like a brother to him most of his life, but still. No, I can't, really, I said again. Will you get this idiot out of here before he says no to a free ticket to the Super Bowl again? Adam asked Julia. Gladly, she said. She pulled me over to the snack table, landing a punch into cups for each of us. We sipped our drinks, my mind still spinning from Adam's offer. You should totally go, Julia told me, a smile in her voice. Don't feel guilty about it. I chuckled, grateful that she knew me so well. I put my arm around her and leaned down to kiss her again. Woo, yeah, kissy kiss! An obnoxious voice yelled over the music. I turned around, thinking somebody was making fun of us, but it was a gang of senior boys giving an underclassman and his date a hard time. The king who'd scouted was a senior named Jeremy Becca. We'd had a few classes together over the years. He was the kind of guy who wore backward baseball caps and pants that sagged 3 inches below the waistline of his underwear. I'd always thought he was a kind of a jerk, but he'd never bothered me, so I never paid much attention to him. Oh, God, Julia said, nodding towards the underclassmen. Seamus Laurie and Anne Henry. Who, the little guys? You know them? The girl, Anne, was petite and red-haired, wearing a modest white dress and a big pink bow in the back. Seamus was short and gangly, with a huge ball of curly hair that circled his head like a space helmet. He was exactly the type of guy who attracted bullies, and he hadn't helped matters by overdressing for the homecoming dance. He wore a powdered blue tuxedo and a white ruffly shirt. They're in the fall play with me, Julia said. They're super sweet. Jeremy flickered a finger at Seamus' ruffled skirt. Nice tuxedo, Duckworth. You two look like you're going to a dork wedding. You don't have to marry her, you know. Jeremy shoved Seema aside. Can I cut in? He grabbed Anne around her waist, laughing in her face. Anne scolded and tried to twist away from Jeremy, but Seamus only stared helplessly at the ground. God, had I ever been that small? I couldn't watch anymore. I pulled away from Julia and pushed in between Jeremy and Anne. All right, Becca, you've had your fun, I said. Why don't you leave them alone? Jeremy took a step back, looking at me like I was something his dog had barked up on the carpet. Why don't you mind your own business, he said. Towel head. Chapter 2. Time slowed to a stop. It was like watching a football game on TV, when they freeze-frame the action to show you whether a guy's feet went out the bounds or not. All the other students around us stopped dancing. I'm sorry, I said. What did you just call me? Jeremy looked me in the eye. I called you a towel head. Towel head. I blinked. Adam appeared next to me, and we exchanged an incredulous glance. I was no 100-pound freshman Jeremy Becca could push around. I was 5'8", 155 pounds, almost all of which was muscle. I could wipe the floor with this guy. I knew it. Adam knew it. Julia knew it. Everybody in the crowd gathering around us knew it. Even Jeremy knew it. So what made him think that he could start calling me names and get away with it? What'd I ever do to you? I asked him. I really wanted to know. It's what you and your kind are doing to my country, camel jockey. Jeremy turned to his buddies, and they snickered. Adam lunged himself at the guy and threw out an arm to hold him back. I pretended it didn't bother me, and I didn't care about some idiot like Jeremy thought. But the truth was, it hurt like a sucker punch in the stomach. I heard it before, of course. Towel head, camel jockey, sand monkey, rag head, and a couple worse names I won't repeat. My dad's white, but my mom's Iranian. Me, I couldn't look more Middle Eastern, even though I was born right here in Phoenix. I've got thick black curly hair, heavy black eyebrows, a strong nose, olive skin. When I was 6 years old, there were older kids on my block, Steve and Ben Hollis. One day I went over to their house, and they started calling me names, like Jeremy here. I'd never heard those names before, and I had no idea what they meant. I don't think Steve and Ben did either. Really, they'd probably just heard some adult somewhere ranting about people who looked like me, and they were trying it out. But I knew the words were mean. I knew that they were insulting me, laughing at me. I ran home in tears. When Darius found out, he went over to their house and beat the snot out of them. He got in big trouble with my parents for it. I was grateful, but still kind of stunned. It was the first time I'd realized how hard it was going to be, growing up Persian American. To this day, that kind of name-calling always hits me so suddenly, so hard. It makes me feel like I'm 6 again, running home in tears to Darius, every single time. Adam still wanted me to let him get to Jeremy, but I shook him off. I fought my own battles now. What's your problem? I asked Jeremy. Jeremy shouted at the crowd. All around us could hear him over the music. My problem is that our homecoming king, the brother of a terrorist. I laughed out loud. Darius? A terrorist? Adam and the other guys around me chuckled too. You've got the wrong guy, Becca. My brother graduated from West Point, the United States Military Academy. Maybe you've heard of it. He's an Army Ranger. You know what you have to go through to become a ranger? Soldiers die training to be rangers. I felt the pride fill my chest as I thought of Darius. He's in Afghanistan right now with the 3rd Ranger Battalion Special Ops, protecting your butt from terrorists. Kissing terrorists' butt, more like, Jeremy said. Maybe if you'd been home watching the news before the dance, not being a big sports ball hero, you would have heard your brother's a traitor to this country, a terrorist. Jeremy turned to his friends. Once an Arab, always an Arab, you know. I threw myself at him. I rammed Jeremy hard enough to drive him into the middle of the dance floor, where a circle opened up for us like it had been the first dance with Julia. I punched Jeremy in the stomach, got a glancing blow on his face, but he didn't go down. He wrapped his arm around my head and tried to punch me. All around us, people were yelling and cheering. The music was thumping, the colored lights were flashing. Jeremy's friends jumped me, pulling me away, punching and kicking me. And then Adam and the rest of the football team were throwing punches. And the crowd was chanting, "Fight! Fight! Fight!" And I was punching back, hitting anything that moved. And then Mr. Philpott was there pulling us all apart, and Mr. Marks and Senor Serrano, and then it was all over. Chapter 3. 10 minutes later, I sat outside the principal's office with Adam and a couple of my teammates. Julia had gone off to search for some ice for my split lip, which was hurting really bad. Jeremy and his friends were inside the office now, getting chewed out so loud that we could hear Mrs. De Rosa through the wall. Jeremy was definitely in trouble for saying things he had, but we were all probably going to be suspended for fighting. I didn't care. It was worth it to defend Darius. He and I had a code of honor. We looked out for each other, no matter what, just like me and Adam. I nodded to my friend in silence, telling him thanks for sticking up to me, and he nodded back. Nothing more needed to be said. The door to the main office opened, and my stomach sank to the sight of a familiar face. "Oh, man," I muttered. "They called my mom." Mom was wearing her work clothes, blue jeans, yellow Western-style shirt, cowboy boots, white Stetson hat. I had a fleeting thought that Jeremy had no doubt to be disappointed to learn my mother didn't wear a headscarf. I slumped down in my chair. I didn't need my mom to come pick me up from school, especially from the homecoming dance. What was I, 12? I was a senior in high school. I had my own car, for crying out loud. One of my teammates snickered, and I knew I was going to live this down. Some homecoming king I was. "There you are, Cameron June," Mom said. She used the Persian word for dear whenever she was worried about me or Darius. "Listen, Mom, I can explain," I said, trying to head things off before she blew up at me. Mom frowned at my bruised face. "Cromron, have you been fighting?" "It's not his fault, Mrs. Smith," Adam said. "This idiot was saying really stupid stuff about him and Darius." Mom looked sharply at the mention of Darius's name. "You didn't know I've been in a fight? The school didn't call you?" I asked. Something was wrong here, something big. Suddenly, I realized Mom wouldn't usually be in her work clothes this late at night. She would have the chance to come in with Dad and watch me in the football game. And now that I thought about it, I haven't seen them all game at night. I've been so focused on the Scouts, I hadn't looked for my parents in the Strands. Had they even been there? They missed a game. But if they weren't at the game, what were they doing? Jeremy's sneering voice came back at me. "Maybe if you'd been home watching the news before the dance, not being a big sports ball hero, you would have heard, your brother's a traitor to this country." My head spun. I felt like my whole body was sinking right through the seat of my chair, the floor swallowing me up. "Mom," I said. "Mom, what's going on?" Mom looked like she was about to cry, and then I realized she had been crying. "Kamran, you have to go home right away," she said. "It's your brother." Chapter 4. Mom gripped the steering wheel of her Suburban so hard I thought it was going to snap off with her hands. We'd left my car at the school so I could ride home with her. She'd probably spoken to Mrs. De Rosa, though I had no idea about what. I didn't know anything. "Mom, what is it? What's going on?" I demanded. "Is Darius okay?" My greatest fear was that Darius was hurt, or worse. A light turned red ahead of us, and Mom stopped the car so suddenly that I thrown against my seatbelt. "There's this report on the news," Mom said at last. "An attack on the U.S. Embassy in Turkey. There's someone in this video, someone who looks like your brother." "What, defending the embassy?" None of this made sense. Darius wasn't assigned to any embassy. He was deployed in Afghanistan. "No," Mom said. "Attacking it." "What?" I felt a jolt of shock. But no, it's not Darius. It can't be. This is crazy. Why would he attack a U.S. embassy? How could he be in Turkey? I don't know, Mom said. The light turned green and she got into the car, throwing me back against my seat. Someone at the paper called us while we were getting ready to come to the game. We had no idea what they were talking about. The Estelas across the street called and told us to turn on the news. That's when we saw the video. Is it him? I asked. It can't be him. I don't know, Mom said again, still squeezing the steering wheel. It's hard to tell. What does the army say? They have to know if he's in Turkey, right? We haven't heard from them. Your father's been trying to call them. This is nuts, I said. I wished for the millionth time that my parents had brought me a smartphone, but all I had was the flip phone that could barely text. Same with Mom. I turned on the radio instead, surfing for something, anything about Darius. It was all just pop stations until I flipped over to the AM dial and found a political shock rock ranting about it. So the soldier, no, that's not fair to a real American soldiers, the guy was saying. This man, this Muslim, he goes to West Point and learns everything America has to teach him about tactics and military history and advanced warfare, then gets himself sent to Afghanistan so he can go AWOL and share everything he knows with Al-Qaeda. So I guess that's what the US Army does now, train Islamic extremists how to fight, and then pay their way overseas so they can become terrorists. Our first problem here is allowing Muslims to join the army. Turn it off, Mom said. But turn it off. I watched the radio off and sat back in my seat with a huff. The guy was full of it, but I wanted to hear any news I could about Darius. The idea that Darius went to West Point so he could learn all kinds of stuff for Al-Qaeda was ridiculous. As I stared out the window, I remembered that day, almost 7 years ago, when we'd gotten at the crack of dawn to drive Darius to his first day at the United States Military Academy. The four of us, me, Darius, Mom, and Dad, had stayed overnight at a motel just outside West Point, New York, after flying in the day before. I was still jet-lagged and could barely drag myself out of bed, but Darius looked like he'd been up all night. He was so excited and so nervous he couldn't eat a thing at breakfast, and he hardly said 2 words to us on the drive over. He filled into Einstein Howard Hall, where older cadets told us how hard the next 7 weeks of cadets' basic training were going to be. Beast Barracks, he called it. I looked up at Darius. He sat hunched over in his seat, his arms folded across his stomach like the time he was trying not to be sick on a roller coaster at Castles and Coasters. Are you gonna puke? I whispered. No, shut up, he told me. But he sure looked like he was going to puke. I scooted a little closer to Mom. The cadets checked his watch. You now have 90 seconds to say goodbye to your loved ones, he announced. There were gasps and cries of alarm, and mine was one of them. I knew why they were there, of course. Darius was going off to college, a very special kind of college, where we wouldn't see him again until he got to leave at Christmas. But the reality hadn't set in until that moment, when they told us we only had a minute and a half to say goodbye. Darius had been my constant companion, my sometimes playmate, sometimes confidant, sometimes adversity, and full-time best friend. And now he was going away forever. Or close enough to forever. Little kid that I was, I burst into tears. Mom was in tears as well, hugging Darius, and I shamelessly threw my arms around him too. I sobbed and wouldn't let him go, even when older cadets started calling for the newbies to come away with them. Hey, you're going to be okay, Darius told me, hugging me back. Don't go, I told him. I don't want you to go. I'll see you again soon, he promised. And when I do, I'll be a real soldier. I don't want you to be a real soldier. I want you to stay at home with me. The older cadets called out again. After they'll come round, Darius said, pulling away. You have to be the strongest of the strong, the bravest of the brave. You can do that, can't you? I shook my head, still sobbing. Yes, you can, Darius said. I know you can. Darius gave Mom and Dad one last hug and hurried off, wiping his eyes. I watched him until he disappeared down a hallway with the 1,000 or so other new cadets. The rest of the day was dreadfully boring for a fifth grader. Speeches from officers, a tour of the academy, lunch in the cafeteria. I walked around feeling like a hollow shell of myself, as the best, most important part of me had scooped out with a spoon. We saw Darius again that day once, at the oath ceremony. We sat in bleachers while the new cadets marched across the quad of the trumpets and drums of a military band, every family straining to find their son or daughter in the ranks. We didn't have to stretch to see Darius, though. He was right there in the first row. At least I was pretty sure it was Darius. While we had been wandering around the academy grounds, Darius had gone through a transformation. His shoulder-length curly black hair was replaced with a severe crew cut that made him look almost bald. And gone, too, were his jeans, t-shirts, and sneakers, replaced with a white button-down short-sleeved shirt, black shoes, and gray pants with a thick black line down the sides. Darius and the other new cadets stopped with parade ground precision, and then repeated the military academy's oath back to the senior officer. I do solemnly swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and bear true allegiance to the national government, that I will maintain and defend the sovereignty of the United States, paramount to any and all alliances, sovereignty, or fealty that I may own to any state or country whatsoever. Seeing Darius there, reciting the oath, head shaved, face serious, so proud that he was practically about to pop a button on his new army-issue shirt, everything changed for me. All day I had wished he would come back home with us, but right there, in that moment, I understood why he would leave sunny Arizona and fly across the country to this old gray place. Why he would abandon his friends, his family, me. Darius was going to be a part of something much greater than himself, something with tradition, with meaning, an extension of everything Mom had taught us about being Persian. Darius was joining a new family. He was going to be a United States soldier. That was the day I decided I was going to go to West Point and be a soldier too. He swore an oath, I said, my forehead against the car window. What? Mom asked. Darius swore an oath to defend the United States, I said. He wouldn't go back on that. Mom turned onto our street and pulled up short. An army of local TV trucks and camera crews was parked outside our house, waiting for us. Chapter 5. Have you heard from Darius? What has the army told you? Is Darius a traitor? Reporters with microphones and cameras swarmed around the car, yelling questions through the window. Are you Muslim? Is Darius a Muslim? Have you seen the footage yet? Is it Darius? Mom honked and gunned at the engine, and the reporters jumped out of the way, so she sped into the driveway. Go straight inside, Mom told me. Don't say anything to them. Don't even look at them. Butterflies filled my chest, and my pulse quickened. Mom pulled the keys out of the ignition, and I leaped out of the car and ran for the front door. Kamran, wait! Someone yelled. Tell us about your brother. I kept my head down and kept running. Stay off our property, Mom yelled at the reporters. She hurried inside after me, slamming the door. Dad had the TV on CNN, watching the news coverage. He stood when he came in, going immediately to Mom to give her a hug. I went right to the TV. Headlines scrolled across the bottom of her screen. But they were on a commercial break. I never watched CNN. I didn't even know what channel it was on. The only news I had ever watched was sports news on ESPN. What are they saying? I asked. What's going on? Nothing new, Dad said. It might be Darius. It might just be someone wearing his uniform. Dad and I shared a glance. The only way someone else could be wearing Darius's uniform was if they'd taken it off of him, which meant Darius was captured. Or dead. So either Darius was now a terrorist, or he was captured or dead. I didn't know which was worse. Welcome back, said CNN Wolf Blitzer. He stood in front of a bank of huge televisions, all showing different videos of gunfire and explosions around a sandstone white building, flying the U.S. flag. We return now to the attack of the United States Embassy in Turkey, where 53 people are known to be dead, including 22 civilians. And most disturbing of all, leading the attack appears to be a U.S. Army Ranger, Captain Darius Smith. Or perhaps not. With me now is the former director of the U.S. Nation Counterterrorism Center, Chip Conrad. Mr. Conrad? CNN put a picture of Darius up on the screen. A posed photograph of him in his uniform, looking as handsome and serious as ever. Then they split the screen and showed a still form of video taken in the embassy. In the background, a guy stood waving his finger in the air. He was the same height as Darius, but I couldn't make out his face. It was surreal, listening to Wolf Blitzer talk about my brother, saying where he grew up, what his grades were at West Point, going over his acceptance in the Army Rangers, his assignments in the Middle East. It was weird, as if Emily Reed, my favorite correspondent on ESPN, and not just because she happened to be so pretty, had been talking about my performance in the homecoming game on SportsCenter. The phone rang. I reached for it, but Dad waved away and answered himself. Hello? No. No, we have no comment at this time. Please don't call again. He clicked off the phone and tossed it on the couch. They won't stop calling, but I have to keep answering in case it's the army. Mr. Conrad I'm going to have you stop you there, Wolf Blitzer said on TV. I'm told we have a startling new video just released by Al-Qaeda. That definitely includes U.S. Army Captain Darius Smith. Let's bring you that video now. Mom and Dad and I huddled around the television set as Darius appeared. Seated behind a desk in front of a black curtain, a wave of shock hit me. It was Darius, my brother. But just like the first day at West Point, when he appeared transformed, now he was transformed all over again. Darius was still wearing his army fatigues, but he'd grown a straggly little beard and wore a white headscarf around his curly hair. Mom let out a gasp, and Dad put his arm around her. I felt the room start to spin all over again. My name is Darius Smith, Darius told the camera, and I take full responsibility for today's Al-Qaeda attack on the U.S. Embassy in Turkey. My mother sobbed once, and my father closed his eyes. I shook my head, silently pleading with Darius not to say this, not to do this, but he kept going. I was once asked to commit atrocities against the Muslim people by the United States government, Darius said, reading from a piece of paper. I now choose to lead the same innocent victims in the fight against American tyranny. Today's strike on the U.S. Embassy is merely the first in a series of planned attacks against the United States to punish infidels for their crimes against Islam. Once when we were little, Darius and I watched a movie about aliens, and I was scared. I covered my eyes and told Darius to tell me when the things were off the screen. I waited, terrified that if I peeked through my fingers, I'd see one and have nightmares for weeks. Finally, Darius told me that it was alright to look, but the aliens were still there. I screamed, and Darius laughed and laughed. He'd done it on purpose, just to mess with me. I was so mad I grabbed one of the sofa cushions to beat him over the head, but then I got scared and I hid behind it instead. I felt like that now. I couldn't decide whether I was more frightened or mad. I started trembling. No, no, I yelled at the Darius on TV. The tie I'd worn to the dance felt like it was suffocating me, and I tore it down and threw it on the floor. Darius kept talking about his infidels, jihad, martyrs, Al-Qaeda, but I wasn't listening anymore. All I could hear was the sound of my own blood thumping in my ears, my breath coming short and fast, my mother crying quietly beside me. Whatever else Darius had to say didn't matter anyway. All that mattered now was that our lives were never, ever going to be the same. Chapter 6. For the first time since kindergarten, I was officially afraid to go to school. I stood at the bottom of the steps that led to the front doors of my high school, letting the other students flow around me. A few of them didn't know who I was, freshmen mostly, kids who didn't care about football or homecoming or any of that stuff, kids whose parents didn't watch the news. The rest of them knew exactly who I was, and all about Darius had done. or said he had done. I haven't slept at all Friday nights, going over the video of Darius in my mind. The more I thought about it, the more I realized that Darius' speech was textbook terrorist greed, which is why I was sure it was written for him by somebody else. Somebody who made him read it, or brainwashed him into reading it. There's no way Darius had willingly abandoned the army to join Al-Qaeda. I was sure of it. Even if he didn't care much about Islam, and her family had ever been religious at all, Persians were Shia Muslims, Al-Qaeda were Sunni Muslims. There's no way he would join Al-Qaeda, and there was no way Al-Qaeda would let him. I tried to tell my parents my theory, but they'd been too numbed by the shock and sadness to listen. And the first video of Darius had been followed by another on Saturday, and another on Sunday. Darius is training Al-Qaeda troops. Darius calling on American Muslims to take up arms against their country. With each new video, the case against him mounted. And from the looks of the other students were giving me on Monday morning, he had already been found guilty, and I was guilty by association. My hands clenched into fists. My heart raced. My face got hot. A flood of emotions overcame me, a mishmash of feelings I thought I'd already dealt with during the roller coaster of a weekend. I wanted to run away and hide. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to punch something. I wanted to punch somebody. But I didn't want to go climb up those stairs to school. But I did. I was not going to let those looks stop me from living my life. Inside, it was worse. The crowd in the hall parted from me like they were a stream of water and a drop of oil. Conversations stopped. Eyes followed me. Silence stalked me. I'd been stared at like this before, but ever so bluntly. It happened sometimes when I was out in public, someplace where nobody knew who I was. I'd be with Darius, a Metro Center mall, and people, adults mostly, would give us these side glances. They'd look us up and down, suspicion in their eyes. They didn't think we noticed, but we did. I did, at least. More than seeing it, I could feel it. Feel the way people watched me as I browsed the game store and stood in line at Orange Julius. As soon as I got comfortable, as soon as I forgot that I happened to have the same nose and skin and hair as some monster who'd once hijacked a plane, a suspicious glance would remind me all over again. These people had no idea I've grown up in a suburb of Phoenix like any other American kid, playing Xbox and eating Cheetos. Or they didn't care. They feared me, hated me, just because of my skin was brown. But it had never been that way at my school. This was my turf, my kingdom. Just a short walk to my locker twisted my guts into a tangle of spaghetti. I didn't know how I was going to survive a whole day of this. I looked for Adam. He texted me a little over the weekend. Stuff like, "Hey, you okay?" But mostly, he had given me some space while my family and I dealt with each other horror that appeared on CNN. The one person I hadn't been able to talk to was Julia. And when I spotted her down the hall, surrounded by her girlfriends, I practically ran over to her. If I needed anybody's support now, it was hers. "Hey, Julia," I called. Julia's friends gave her a quick glance and then peeled off. I leaned down to kiss her and she turned away, making me kiss her cheek instead of her lips. I frowned. "I tried calling you and texting you all weekend," I said, fighting down a pang of worry. "I was busy with the play," she said, still not looking at me. Something was definitely up. Could it be about Darius? But Julia knew me. She knew Darius. I pushed on, trying to make things right by ignoring the tension between us. "How'd rehearsals go?" "Fine," Julia said. "Did you get that one scene right? The one you'd been working on?" "Yes," she said, and then, "I have to go to homeroom." "Julia, wait," I said, catching up with her before she could run off. "What's going on?" She looked up at me, at last, her lips thin, her blue eyes filled with hurt and sorrow. But there was something else in her expression. Fear. I staggered back. I startled as she had slapped me. "Julia, please don't call me any more for a little while," she said.
her voice small, the opposite of her usual confident tone. Are you breaking up with me? I asked. I blinked, feeling lightheaded. You can't break up with me, I said. I love you. Julia swallowed a sob and turned away, a hand to her mouth. Julia, I called, my voice cracking, but she was gone. I realized suddenly that we'd had an audience, a bunch of kids who'd been pretending not to watch the homecoming queen dump the king. My face was hot with embarrassment as tears welled up in my eyes. I couldn't let them see me cry too. I pushed the gawking into the boys' bathroom and huddled over the sink. I wiped away a tear with the back of my hand. My chest burned like my heart had been ripped out. I didn't know how to handle this. I'd never been dumped before. I never told a girl I loved her before. Now both had happened to me on the same day. Out in the hall, the bell rang. I was going to be late to homeroom, but I didn't care. I ran the water and splashed some on my face, trying to hide the tear stains. I wanted to crawl into the corner and fold in on myself until I disappeared. Julia had broken up with me, but what really haunted me was that look in her eyes. Julia was afraid of me. I looked in the mirror, trying to see what she had seen there, trying to see the monster everybody else saw, the terrorist. But all I saw was me. Chapter 7. 22, 22, Blue 17, Francisco called. I stood beside him, watching the defense shift. We were an hour and a half into grueling practice. The air was dry and dusty, and the Arizona sun was blazing. Even though it was November, sweat poured down my face inside my helmet. This was hard, but it was nothing compared to what I'd been through at school that day. The glances, the whispers, the fear. Julia's face came back to me again. That look that squeezed my heart and wrenched my gut. It was a look I'd seen all day in the faces of my classmates, all except Adam, who'd been the only one who talked to me, to sit with me at lunch. Everyone else seemed to believe that I was some radical Islamic terrorist. I didn't have anything against Islam. My mom's younger brother, my uncle Rahim, he was more religious than my mom was. He took me and Darius to a mosque when we were little, and I remember the men on their praying mats, bowing and muttering their prayers. But my family wasn't religious. We celebrated Christmas, not Ramadan, but mostly because we liked giving each other presents. We didn't go to any church, Christian or Muslim, but nobody cared about facts. They'd already decided I was Muslim and I was going to turn on America, just like my brother had. I steamed underneath my football helmet. I had 7 more months left until graduation, and then I'd go off to West Point. They would never have to see my Arab face ever again. I shook my head. Persians weren't even Arabs. They were 2 different things. But like I said, nobody cared about the facts. Set, hut, Francisco called. The ball snapped. Francisco dropped back to a pass. I blinked, tried to remember where I was, what I was supposed to be doing. I stepped up a second too late to block. Wham! Omar, the linebacker, absolutely plastered me, knocking me off my feet. It took me a few seconds to get my wind back and sit up, but by the time Francisco had already thrown the ball downfield and the play was over. I shook my head, trying to see straight again. The knock from Omar had been a cold reboot to my system. We weren't supposed to hit that hard in practice, but I knew it was more my fault than Omar's. My mind had everywhere else but here. Wolf Blitzer's face on TV, Julia's face in the school hallway, Darius's face, reading a terrorist screed halfway around the world. Coach Reynolds blew his whistle, and I pulled myself to my feet. Nobody offered to help me. Smith, coach, shouted at me, "No doubts, no second guesses, no distractions, right?" Easy for him to say. I nodded to let him know I had gotten the message and came back to the huddle. Fine, I thought, half listening as Francisco called the next play. School was going to be tough. Practice was going to be tough. Life was going to be tough from here on out. But I could be tough too. I've been all my life. I'd had to be to keep up with Darius. He was 8 years older than me, and 8 years is a long time in kid years. He was a giant to me. We'd play together a lot, the way brothers do, but there was other kids Darius's age in the neighborhood, and he liked playing with them too. Especially football. I was way smaller than Darius and all his friends, and they never wanted me in their games. Go home, Kamran, Darius told me one day when they were picking teams. I want to play too, I whined. You can watch from the tree, he said. I don't want to watch, I want to play. You're too little. I am not. I started to cry and pitch a fit. If you don't let me play, I'll tell Mom and Dad. The other kids rolled their eyes and begged Darius to come on and start playing, but I turned the crying up to 11. Darius huffed and dragged me away by the arm. Stop being a baby, he told me when we were away from the other boys. I'm not a baby, I protested. Then stop acting like one. I sniffed and dragged the back of my hand across my nose. I want to play. You're too little, Kamran. I don't care. Darius huffed again. Okay, fine. You want to play? You can play. But if you get knocked down, you can't cry. You don't get the ball, you can't whine. You get scraped up, you walk it off. You understand? If you're going to play with the big kids, you can't be a baby. You have to be tough. The strongest of the strong, I told him, still sniffling. The bravest of the brave. He frowned, like he didn't like I could do it, which only made me want to show him all the more, to prove that I could be tough enough. That day, everything happened that Darius said would happen. I got knocked down, scraped up, and I never once got the ball. But I did what I promised. I bit back tears. I kept my mouth shut. I wiped off the blood and kept playing. And the next day, I came back. And the next day, and the next. And pretty soon they were all giving me the ball, really including me in plays. Then one day, I wasn't the last picked for a team. Those games with big kids were how I got to be so good at football. Those games had made me better, tougher, and I was going to need that toughness now, every last bit of it. The center hicked the ball. Francisco dropped back. Omar came right at me. This time I was ready. I met him with my shoulder, knocking him away. He bounced back at me, pushing, shoving. I could barely get an arm to block him. He bumped me, rammed me, elbowed me. It was like he wasn't even trying to get past me. He was just roughing me up, like the big kids had done to me the first game back in the neighborhood. I felt all the frustration of the whole day wash over me, and I lost it. The whistle blew, and I got right into Omar's face, ready to fight. Chapter 8. What's your problem? I yelled. Omar shrugged like he hadn't done anything wrong. I shoved him, and he shoved me back. I swung a fist at him, trying to score a hit around his pads, and soon we were punching and kicking each other. Coach Reynolds ran over, blowing his whistle, and pulled us apart. Enough! Enough! He told us. What's going on here? He went crazy, Omar said. He started shoving me, and then took a swing at me. Because you attacked me, I said. I threw myself at Omar again, but Adam grabbed me and held me back. You, Coach Reynolds told me, go cool off. The rest of you line up again. I keep trying to get at Omar, but Adam spun me away. Hey, he said. Kamran, hey, listen to me. Omar was just rushing the passer. I blinked. I was still breathing hard, my rage making fists in my hands. I twisted to look at Adam's shoulder to see if Omar and his buddies were talking about me. Adam tugged my helmet back around. Kamran, he was just doing the same thing he always does. I saw him. Let it go, Adam said. Don't be so sensitive. I turned on Adam. He was tall and gangly, his Adam's apple sticking out beneath his chin strap and his helmet. Don't be so sensitive, I said, my voice rising. Maybe you didn't notice that everybody treated me like today. Like I had a bomb strapped to my chest. Adam was quiet. All day, we'd stupidly avoided the subject of Darius, talking about stuff like the Super Bowl and math homework instead. But I couldn't pretend to ignore the truth anymore. People hated me, feared me. Look, Kamran, Adam said. You can't blame people for reacting like that. I can't? Not even my teammates. Not even my girlfriend. They think Darius is a terrorist. They think I'm a terrorist. That part's stupid, Adam admitted. But Kamran, you have to understand that everybody else sees your brother. He basically went on TV and said, I'm a terrorist. But he's not. He can't be. You know that. We've been friends since 3rd grade. You know Darius. I thought I did, Adam said quietly. His words hurt worse than anything Omar had done. I shoved Adam in the shoulder pads, making him stumble. Take it back, I told him. He shoved me hard, and we faced off. A clock's tick from throwing punches like Omar and I had. Darius isn't a terrorist, I told Adam, my voice low. Who are you trying to convince? Me or you? Adam shot back. That one hit too close to home. All the doubts I had been fighting crowded into my head, and my face burned with guilt and shame under my helmet. I pushed Adam away. You know what? Keep that Super Bowl ticket. You can take Omar, or better yet, take Julia. I hear she's free. Kamran, Adam called, but I was already on my way to the locker room. I was done. Coach Reynolds would be mad at me, probably bench me for the rest of the next game, but I would deal with that later. Right then, I just wanted to get out of there, go home and disappear into my room and never come out again. I slammed my helmet on its shelf and yanked off my pads. In all my life, no matter what I'd been or what else was happening, the football field had been my sacred ground. When I put that helmet on, I wasn't a terrorist, whatever else people secretly thought of me. I was Smith, number 13, running back. I was part of a team, judged only by my efforts and accomplishments. People cheered for me on the football field, held up signs encouraging me on. Now it felt like even this last place of refuge was gone. I showered, changed, and got out of there before anyone came back to the locker room. I didn't want to see anybody, especially not Adam. He and I had been best friends since elementary school, and he had known Darius that entire time. Darius used to throw the football for us in the backyard. He used to play video games with me and Adam after school. If Adam didn't believe in Darius, we couldn't be friends anymore. First Julia, now Adam. I was totally on my own. When I drove to my house, I wasn't surprised to see the row of TV vans up and down my street. But there was something else too, something new. A black armored car with Homeland Security written on the side was parked in front of the yard. It looked like something from Darius's pictures from Afghanistan, a tank on wheels. And all around it were white delivery vans marked DHS, and big black SUVs with flashing red and blue lights. The Department of Homeland Security had come to visit. Chapter 9. People in business suits and white zip-up hazmat gear moved in and out of my house. I couldn't get anywhere close to my own driveway, so I parked down the street and walked home. A policeman stopped me at a barricade. I live here, I told him. He told me to wait while he radioed it in. I felt a bead of sweat roll down the center of my back. My pulse quickened and my breath came short. If you'd hooked me up to a lie detector right then, I couldn't even have said my name was Kamran Smith without the needle jiggling all over the place. I felt like a criminal, and I hadn't done anything. Across the street was the Estelle kids stared at me from their driveway. 2 government agents in suits came out. They asked me to unzip my gym bag and took my book bag so they could look inside with flashlights. What's going on? I demanded, but they didn't answer. Why wouldn't anyone tell me anything? Why did I have to be searched before I could even go in my own house? When they were sure my American history booklet wasn't a bomb, the 2 agents walked me inside. Mom and Dad stood in the living room talking to 2 or more agents in suits while the astronaut-looking hazmat people took apart the kitchen. What's going on? I asked again. They're searching the house, Dad told me. For what? I looked down the hall where the hazmat guys in my room going through my stuff. Wait, you can't do that, I said, heading down the hall. An armed policeman stopped me and collared me back with my parents. I assure you we can't, said one of the agents. She was a large white woman in a gray skirt and jacket. Her partner, an African-American guy in an almost matching gray suit, showed me his DHS badge. We're from the Department of Homeland Security, the woman said. Yeah, I saw your tank parked on the lawn. Kamran, Mom said. What? It's like Operation New Dawn out there, I said. What do you know about Operation New Dawn? The male agent asked me. I know my brother Darius was taking part in it as a U.S. Army Ranger until he was captured and brainwashed by Al Qaeda. Kamran, don't, Dad said. Dad, they're taking our house apart like we're terrorists. We're American citizens. We've been authorized to conduct a search of these premises, the woman said. A similar search has already been conducted at your brother's apartment near from beginning. We'll be wanting to talk to each of you, individually first, and then together. Darius isn't a terrorist, I yelled. All the Hazmas people stopped and turned to look at me, but nobody said a word. It was creepy. I took a step back. I'm telling you, he's not. Kamran, don't make this worse than it already is, Dad said. Worse? Worse? How could it be worse? Kamran, just do what your father says and have a seat on the couch, said the woman. I don't want to sit on the couch, I said. It wasn't a suggestion, the woman told me. I clenched my teeth, my face hot. Who was this stranger to tell me what to do? Mom put a hand on my arm. Kamran, sit with me. Mom had always been able to calm me down when it got like this, when I wanted to argue and fight. I let her pull me to the couch, and the woman from DHS went away. The guards in black SWAT uniforms stayed. I watched as DHS agents went through our DVDs in the living room. Like there might be something hidden inside the Iron Man case. Down the hall, I heard somebody talking, taking the lid off the toilet in the bathroom I'd once shared with Darius. My stomach clenched, and I thought the urge to yell again. This wasn't fair. None of it. Mom and Dad and I hadn't done anything wrong. And we were just supposed to sit here and take it. Like I was supposed to just take the stares of my fellow students, the betrayals of my friends. I shook with rage. I hated the DHS. I hated the press. I hated the people at the mall, the kids at school. I hated my mom and dad for sitting by. I hated Adam and Julia for turning on me. I hated Darius for doing this to me. Darius. All the television went out of my arms and legs. Like when you get off a roller coaster and can't walk right for the next few minutes. It was true. I hated Darius. It was Darius's fault all this was happening. It was Darius's fault my life was ruined. The agents came back over to where Mom, Dad, and I were sitting, and they questioned us. Had Darius ever experienced anger at the United States government? Had he ever experienced sympathy towards Al Qaeda? Had he ever showed unusual interests in Sunni Islam and Sharia law? Who were his friends, his acquaintances? Had we ever heard from him in the last few weeks? Letters, phone calls, emails? Mom and Dad answered most of the questions, but when the agents looked at me, I answered robotically, keeping my anger at Darius buried deep inside. When it was clear they weren't going to get anything else from us, everyone departed, leaving behind more TV camera crews and an overturned house. Mom and Dad went to work silently, cleaning up the living room and kitchen. I went down to the hall to see if they'd done anything to my room. Chapter 10. I walked into a wreck. My clothing drawers had been ruffled through, my comic books were all pulled out, my bed sheets removed, the mattress flipped. Everything in my desk drawers had been dumped out. They had gone through every book on the shelf, every bag of football equipment, every CD and DVD case. The posters on my walls had been taken down, the closet emptied. Homeland Security had left no pile of dirty clothes unturned. I lay down on my stripped bed, trying not to cry. It felt like thieves had broken into our house, like my belongings weren't really mine anymore. And they weren't. None of the DHS could come any time they wanted and mess with everything. As much as I hated him right then, I wished Darius were there. He was the person I'd always turn to when bad things happened. Even before Adam, Darius had always given the best advice. But you never told me what to do when you were the problem, Darius. I rapped the wall between my room and Darius's room with my knuckle. using the old signals we used as kids to communicate with each other when we were supposed to be asleep. A certain series of knocks from Darius meant Mom and Dad were watching TV, so it was safe for me to come to his room. I'd sneak over, and Darius would invent stories for me, using his G.I. Joe action figures as stand-ins for Rostam and Saivash, heroes from the Persian mythology. Come over, I tapped. Come over. Come back, Darius. I need you. I knew, of course, that my brother wasn't going to answer. I got up and went next to his room. Homeland Security had gone through it too, of course. It didn't look as bad. Darius had moved out when he graduated from West Point, so there wasn't much to mess up. Still, I put all his school trophies and medals and pictures back in place, rearranging all his model tanks and airplanes like the way he liked them. And then I found the code. It was buried under some of the things they dumped out on his desk. A piece of loose-leaf notebook paper with Darius's 13-year-old scrawl on it, mounted on a faded blue sheet construction paper. The Code of Honor, it said, at the top, and underneath were written the 7 rules we thought of heroes should live by. 1. Be the strongest of the strong. 2. Be the bravest of the brave. 3. Help the helpless. 4. Always tell the truth. 5. Be loyal. 6. Never give up. 7. Kill all monsters. We were big on killing monsters. Darius and I had solemnly signed the bottom of the paper in our grade 5 cursive. If we could have signed it in blood, we would have. I read the code again. It was just kid stuff, but Darius and I had played by that code for so long that I knew it by heart. We'd lived it, believed in it so much that it had become part of us. Like those people who grew up and list Jedi on census forms where asked what religion they are. Our code of honor had been a kind of faith. I knew Darius would rather die than break it. This was Darius, here on this piece of paper, in these neat and orderly shelves, not the shabby, disheveled nutcase ranting on TV. A wave of guilt pushed me down into the chair of Darius's desk. I'd let myself hate Darius, I realized, because deep down, despite all my protests, a small, dark part of me had believed he really was a traitor. I felt sick to my stomach. How could I have ever thought of the Darius I knew, the Darius I grew up with, could be that person? I remembered being 5 years old. Darius was 13. We were on the trails outside the horse ranch where Mom worked, in the shadows of Superstition Mountain. Just look at them, Sivash, Darius called to me. They're all being infected. I peeked out through the patch of desert sand verbena. The only thing in the dark, dry creek bed below us was a lump brown toad, sunning itself on a rock. But in my mind's eye, I was looking down at the millions of zombies striding from the streets at downtown Phoenix. What do we do, Rostam? I asked, dead serious. This was our never-ending game. Darius pretended to be Rostam, and I was his Porche, Shivash. Mom had read us stories about the heroes, but Darius and I loved making up our own adventures, crazy mashups of the old Persian legends, and whatever movies and books and cartoons we were into at the time. We must be the strongest of the strong, the bravest of the brave, Darius told me, and we must kill all monsters. Prakash, the horse we'd ridden out from the ranch, stretched over to nibble at the verbena. But how? There's so many of them, I said. Darius pulled out one of those cheap plastic troll dolls with fuzzy hair out of his pocket. With this, he said with equal seriousness. It's a magic troll statue. It brings all zombies back to real people. All we have to do is get this on top of the chase tower before the zombies eat our brains. He turned and got ready to run into the valley. Are you ready, Saivash? Darius told me. It's you and me against the world. It's you and me against the world, I thought, staring down at the blue piece of construction paper in Darius's room. I couldn't doubt Darius, couldn't be mad at him, not even when everybody else in the whole entire world thought he was guilty. He needed at least one ally in this, one person who still believed in his innocence, and that had to be me. But what do I do, Rostan? The answers were staring me in the face. Be strong, be brave, be loyal, never give up. I knew then exactly what I was going to do. I was going to clear Darius's name. Chapter 11. I went straight to my desk and pushed all the junk the DHS had dumped onto my floor. The laptop was underneath. I was going to start watching all the videos Darius had made. The networks never showed every minute of them. All they cared about were the juicy parts. The parts where Darius said stuff that they could turn into bites. I wanted to see each video in its entirety. Maybe there was something I could prove Darius was innocent. Out of habit, I first clicked the bookmark to see the status of my West Point application. It took forever to apply to the United States Military Academy. You start halfway through your junior year. Testing, questionnaires, summer leadership seminar, candidate fitness assessments, nomination applications, transcripts. All that had to be done before you could officially apply. Then more letters, more fitness assessments, medical exams, interviews, more transcripts, school evaluations, and then, if you'd done everything right, if you passed all the tests and interviews, and had all the right grades, then maybe you'd be one of the thousands of people accepted out of the 15,000 who apply. I've been building my application for a year now, and every time I got on my computer, I compulsively clicked through the web page where West Point marked all the steps as red or green, depending on what had or hadn't been completed. Mine should have been most all green. I was in the home stretch now, just a few things I couldn't do until January anyway. But right there, in the middle of all green, things I've already done, there was a red X that hadn't been there before. Every candidate for West Point had to give an official nomination for their representative in Congress, one of their 2 senators, or the Vice President of the United States. I had already been nominated by my U.S. representative, Catherine Behrens, but now the green check had turned into a red X. I clicked on it to find out why. All it said was nomination withdrawn. It was suddenly hard to breathe. I got up and paced my room, my arms shaking, my eyes unable to focus on anything. Months of letters, interviews, fitness tests, academic exams, 7 years of hopes and dreams. It was all gone. Darius goes on TV claiming responsibility for the attack on the U.S. Embassy, and my nomination letter to West Point is withdrawn. Boom. Just like that, Representative Behrens had probably set some sort of speed record, resignating her letter once she realized who I was. Couldn't let anybody find out she'd nominated the brother of a terrorist to the United States Military Academy. I stopped pacing and pressed my forehead to the wall. There was still time to get another recommendation, but who was going to give one to me now? Certainly not the Vice President of the United States. So that was it. I was out. It was over. No West Point for me. My entire life, everything I'd ever done, everything I ever planned, was going down the toilet. I kicked an empty trash can against the wall. Mom called down the hall to ask if I was alright. Yeah, I yelled back. I'm just great. Everything's awesome. I kicked the trash can again to let her know just how awesome everything was, and she didn't say anything more. I paced for a few minutes longer, trying to calm down. As upset as I was, I couldn't worry about West Point now. It wasn't important. What was important was clearing Darius's name, and mine with it. Chapter 12. The first video was of Darius at the U.S. Embassy in Turkey, and there was nothing I hadn't seen on TV. Darius in the background, wagging his finger in the air as he urged on the insurgents attacking the embassy. No sound. I still didn't understand why Darius had gotten from Afghanistan to Turkey, but it wasn't like he'd showed up in Japan. Turkey wasn't that far from Afghanistan in the grand scheme of things. I called up the second video. There was a lot more to this than I hadn't seen, and it was hard to watch. I stared into the eyes of my brother as he looked up from the speech he read. It really seemed like he meant all of it, all the ranting against America in the infields, The video was 12 minutes long, but it felt like an eternity. No wonder they'd edited this stuff for television. It went on and on, Darius rambling about previous attacks on Islamic countries, death counts, and his plans for retribution. Like Rostam slaying the dragon, we will cut off America's head. The poison flowing from it like a river, Darius said. Like Rostam in the cave of the Sith Lord, we shall emerge triumphant. Whoa, wait. How Darius just said Sith Lord? I paused the video and clicked back a few seconds. There it was again. Like Rostam in the cave of Sith Lord, we shall emerge triumphant. What was Darius talking about? That part about Rostam cutting off the dragon's head, that was real, or a real myth at least. It was one of the 7 trials of Rostam, but the line about Rostam in the cave of Sith Lord, that was something Darius and I had made up one summer about 10 years ago. We've been obsessed with watching all Star Wars movies, so we started adding lightsabers and spaceships and Jedis to all our Rostam stories. One adventure pitted our hero, Rostam, against Chanteller Palpatine, the dude who becomes the Emperor in the old Star Wars movies. In our story, Rostam went to fight him, but he was captured and taken prisoner in a cave by Palpatine's apprentice, Count Dooku. Captured and taken prisoner in a cave. Rostam did emerge triumphant in our story, but only after being captured and taken prisoner. And not just that, Count Dooku had used his Jedi mind tricks on Rostam to brainwash him and make him attack his friends first. Darius, as Rostam, had come after me as Sivash, and we had fought a long, convoluted lightsaber duel in the backyard. Rostam was just about to kill his old friend when Sivash used the Force to hit Rostam in the head with a Nerf boomerang. The knock on the head was enough to bring Rostam to his senses right to the last minute, and together Rostam and Sivash tracked down Count Dooku and killed him. That had to be the stories Darius was talking about in the video. Rostam in the cave of Sith Lord, but I was the only person who knew that story. I sat back in the chair, stunned. There was something in this video that could clear Darius' name, a secret message only I would understand. Darius had been taken prisoner by the bad guys, and they were making him fight against his friends. Chapter 13. Mom, Dad, it's a code! It's a code! Darius sent me a message in one of the videos, I called, running down the hall to my room. Dad came out of his study, a messy stack of papers in his hands. Mom came to the door of the kitchen. In the second video, I said breathlessly, Darius said Rostam in the cave of Sith Lord. That's from one of our games we played. You know how we always used to pretend we were Rostam and Sivash? Dad blinked and frowned. What? In the speech he read on TV, I watched all of it, the parts they didn't put on TV. Darius talked about one of our adventures, on where Rostam got taken prisoner at Qumran. I seriously doubt Darius is sending you a secret message, Dad said. I think what he had to say was pretty clear, but Mom shook her head, obviously fighting back tears as she returned to the kitchen. This is all bad enough as it is, Qumran, Dad said gently. Don't make it harder on your mother, on all of us. Not now. But Darius is innocent. He's been taken prisoner. He needs our help. The phone rang again. Dad picked it up, and I saw a flicker of hope pass across his face as he said hello. We were all still hoping the army would call, say Darius had been recovered, that he was safe, that it was all a huge mistake. Dad's face immediately fell. It was just another reporter. No, he said. No comment. Please don't call again. He hung up and dropped the phone on the couch. Dad, I'm serious. Darius was trying to tell me something. Qumran, it's been a long day, Dad said. He turned and went back to his office. I wanted to scream. I picked up the phone and squeezed it. I wanted to throw the phone at the wall and smash it into 1,000 pieces. Knock over the lamps, kick the TV, break the windows, the door. Anything to get my parents to wake up from this fog they live in now. I veered back, ready to throw the phone like a football, when I remembered the DHS. I could call the DHS. The lady from the Department of Homeland Security had left her card here somewhere, told us to call in case Darius tried to get in touch with us. Well, he had tried to get in touch with me, hadn't he, in the video? The one who'd raided our house less than 2 hours ago answered the phone on the second ring. Department of Homeland Security. This is Agent Gratz. Yeah, I said. This is Comrade Smith. You left your number and said to call if my brother tried to contact me. Darius? Agent Ging's voice became urgent. Darius has contacted you? How? When? I explained, flauntarily, how I was sure that Darius was trying to send me a message in his video. As I told her about Rostam and Count Dooku, I realized how ridiculous it all sounded. A U.S. embassy had been attacked, people had died, and here I was talking about Persian mythology and Star Wars. I know it sounds stupid, but Darius had to be talking to me in that video. He had to. Agent Gratz was quiet for half a heartbeat longer than she should have been. I could tell she wasn't buying it. Has there been an actual contact with you? She asked, the urgency gone from her voice. That's what I'm trying to tell you, I said. I think he's trying to talk to me in the video. I think he's trying to tell us he's innocent, that he's a prisoner. Somebody's making him do all this. But he hasn't contacted you directly. No, I said, frustrated. She wasn't taking this seriously, but thank you for the information, Kamran, Agent Gratz said. Be sure to call us if Darius tries to contact you directly. I felt the chance to help Darius slipping away. Be loyal, I thought, remembering the code of honor. Never give up. Darius isn't a traitor, I said quickly, but Agent Gratz had already hung up. Chapter 14. I was watching the embassy bombing video again for the 1000th time when Dad knocked on my door. Kamran, dinner. I had skipped school for the past week, glued to my computer in my room. Mom and Dad had let me stay home, and both of them had taken off from work. None of us wanted to brave the reporters camped out on our street. We didn't want to go to work or school and feel the eyes on us, hear the whispers. Adam had texted me a couple of times asking how I was, but I never wrote back. Sometimes I wondered who Adam was going to take to the Super Bowl, or who Julia Gary might be dating now, or who was starting in my place on the football team. But mostly, I didn't care. I didn't have time for that stuff. I didn't have time to care about anything except proving Darius wasn't a traitor. I dragged the video slider back to the 6-minute, 39-second mark and hit play. I'm busy, I said. We have family business to discuss, Dad said. Family business? We never had family business to discuss before. But now we did. Dealing with Darius was our family business now. I dragged myself out of my room, my back legs stiff. I'd been sitting in the chair day after day, staying up late into the night, watching the videos over and over again. Darius made at least one reference to our old Rastam and Sivash games in each one. And I was sure they were supposed to mean something. Something only I could understand. But I didn't know what. Mom and Dad waited at the table, looking as dismissal as I felt. Mom had made lubuya polo, an Iranian dish with rice pilaf, meat, and green beans. It was one of my favorites, but I had no appetite. Apparently my parents weren't very hungry either. No one ate. Your mother and I have discussed moving, Dad said without prelude. Maybe even changing our name. What? I said. You're kidding, right? I was stunned. We were Smiths. We lived in Phoenix. That's the way it had always been. Change our name? Move where? Mexico, maybe, Mom said quietly. Or Canada. I gaped at her. Canada? Or Mexico? I thought you were talking about California or something. You want to leave America? That's just great. How's that gonna look? Come on, Dad started. We can't just move to another country. We're Americans, no matter what Darius has done. The phone rang again. Dad got up from the table to answer while I fumed. No comment, he said after a minute. Please don't call here again. He no sooner hung up than the phone rang again. He frowned as he answered it. Hello? No comment. Please don't call again. While he was talking, Mom's cell phone started to ring. We were still getting calls every day, but not this frequently. This was like the night of the homecoming game, when Darius' first video had appeared, which meant only one thing. Darius had done something bad again. Really bad. Chapter 15. The house phone rang for the 4th time as I turned on the CNN. An American journalist had been beheaded on TV. Darius hadn't held the sword, but he stood by in the background. Stood by, and not done anything to stop it. I sat down on the couch and stared. There was no message in this, no code, just Darius standing there while an American citizen was brutally murdered on television. My stomach churned. I think the only reason I didn't throw up is that I hadn't eaten in 2 days. Tears rolled down my face, spilling onto my t-shirt. I cried for the journalist's family, for Darius, for the whole awful world. How could something like this happen? How could Darius let something like this happen? What had happened to our code? What happened to being the bravest of the brave and helping the helpless? What happened to killing the monsters? What happened to Darius? Mom ran to her bedroom and shut the door. Dad kept fielding phone calls. I sat and watched the TV like a statue, unblinking, like it was my duty to watch, like I owned it to the journalists and all those soldiers and civilians who died in raids Darius had been a part of. I couldn't even hear what was being said over the ringing phone, but it didn't matter. I just had to watch. Suddenly the screen changed. CNN showed now familiar photo of Darius, clean cut in his army uniform. Then they showed a live picture of the front of the house. I blinked, dully realizing what I was looking at the front of my house. The house I was sitting inside right at that second. The camera zoomed in on a man in front of our yard wearing jeans, a t-shirt, and a backyard Diamondbacks baseball cap. He had a handkerchief tied around his nose and mouth like a Old West outlaw, and he was shaking something up in his right hand. I frowned and leaned in close, trying to understand what I was seeing. The man reached up and spray painted a giant letter T just below our front window. Dad, somebody's spray painting our house. Dad looked up from the phone and frowned, trying to process what he was seeing on television. The man had followed the T with a large letter E. He's spray painting our house, I said again. Right now. He's out there right now. Dad ran from the front door and I followed him. Camera lights around us soon as he opened the door. The reporters swarmed around us like lactus. You, Dad called at the vandal. Get out of here. Come make me, Osama, the man called back. He kept spraying. He wasn't scared of us at all. The reporters reached us, lights blazing, questions flying, and Dad backed us both in the house. Dad, he's still out there, I protested. Just leave it alone, Kamran, he said, closing the door. I went to the TV. The vandal was almost finished. In big, crooked red letters, he painted the words terrorists across the front of our house. Right there, for all of our neighbors and CNN and the rest of the world to see. Someone pounded on our front door and rang the doorbell. A reporter climbed over the fence in our backyard. Dad ran around locking all the doors and pulling all shades down. It felt like we were under attack, like all of America was going to break down our door and come for us. And then, later that night, they did. Chapter 16. Was I in an elevator? It was too hard to tell with the stack on my head. I could feel a slight vibration under my feet, and something about the closeness, the hum in the small space, told me it was an elevator. I was with 2 other people. I knew because they led me along, one on each elbow, steering me through whatever building they'd brought me to. Where are you taking me? I asked for the 1000th time. Where are my parents? For the 1000th time, nobody answered me. I hate to admit it, but I was so scared I cried. I've been dragged from house to house, wrists bound and sack over my head, and thrown in a car. We'd driven for a while, the black bag hiding everything from me, and then I was taken out of the car and put on a plane. I recognized the sound of jet engines warming up, knew that I was short climbing up metal stairs, then my hands were recuffed in front of me so I could fit in a seat, and I was buckled in and told to remove my seatbelt. I asked again where I was being taken and where my parents were, but got no answer. Someone put a cold plastic bottle in my hands and told me it was water. Drink, they told me. They pulled the sack up just enough to free my lips, and I drank, if only to prolong the wonderful sensation of fresh air on my chin, my mouth. After that, I got sleepy, passed out. I don't even remember the airplane actually taking off or landing.
I woke up again in another car, on my way to wherever I was now. As the grogginess wore off, the realization slowly dawned on me. I had been drugged. They'd put something in that water to knock me out, make me easier to deal with. I had been taken from my home, handcuffed, hooded, and dragged. My skin crawled with goosebumps. If I had been scared before, I was terrified now. This was deadly serious. I heard the elevator doors slide open. Hands grabbed me by the elbows, and we were walking again. Where had they taken me? If we got on a plane, we probably weren't in Arizona anymore. Some government facility in New Mexico, maybe? Colorado? Nevada? The Air Force had all kinds of bases out west. It could be any of them. I was walked down an echoey corridor and led inside a room. The chair squawked as it pulled up for me, and the hands pulled me down into it, my arms landing on an empty metal table. There was a clink of chains, and someone attached my handcuffs to the table with a click. Then, right before the last person left the room, they pulled the black sack off my head. I sucked in the cold, fresh air with relief as the door clicked shut behind me. I was alone in a small white room with a mirrored window along one side with a camera with a glowing red light in the corner. I'd seen enough cop shows to know that the big window was for. There's where people sat and watched you while you were interrogated. This was an interrogation room. There was nothing else there besides me, the table I was hung up to, and two more chairs. "Hello?" I called. I turned to the mirrored window. "Is anybody there? Where am I? What's going on?" Nobody came. Nobody answered. Somebody might have been watching me behind that glass and on that camera, but I was all alone. I put my head down on my arms and tried not to cry. Chapter 17. The door opened behind me, and I jerked my head up. Had I been sleeping? How long had I been in this room? I don't know. I didn't have my phone to tell the time. The white man and woman came in and sat down. The man was older than my father, but younger than my grandfather. In his 50s, maybe? I always had a hard time guessing people's ages. He was wearing suit pants and a ruffled white shirt with no tie. He had dark brown hair and looked like hadn't been combed since last week, and stubble that was closer to the beginning of a beard. His mouth was small and thin over a short, sharp chin. His forehead was creased in a frown or look of concern, or maybe both. He had sat down in his chair and studied me with his gray-blue eyes. "Do we really need the handcuffs?" he asked. The woman ignored him. He set a thick file folder on the table and sat down, clasping her hands over it. She was thin and pretty and wore a business suit with a skirt. Her face was round and soft, but the way she wore her blonde hair pulled back made her look hard, tough. Everywhere the guy was laid back and sloppy. She was neat and professional. She sat so straight her back didn't even touch the chair. "Cameron Smith? I'm a special agent." It was Whiskey. She introduced the man, but he didn't offer his name. "Where am I?" I asked. "Why did you bring me here? I don't know anything." "You're a guest of the United States government," the woman said. I tried to lift my hands away from the table where they were chained. "A guest?" "We'd like to talk to you about your family," Special Agent Tomogatsky said. "Where are my parents? Can I see them?" "Not right now," Special Agent Tomogatsky said. She flipped open the file folder. "I want a lawyer," I told her. I don't know why I needed a lawyer. I just wanted someone here with me besides these government people, and I had seen people say that on TV. "I'm afraid it doesn't work that way," she told me. "You're not officially under arrest." "Then can I go?" "No. As I said, you're a guest of the United States government." "Until when?" "Until we get the answers we need," Special Agent Tomogatsky said. "Now let's talk about your mother." "My mom? Was she born in Iran? Is that right?" Here we go, I thought. We're all terrorists because my mom was born in Iran. Yeah, so what? She came to America in 1978 to escape the Iranian Revolution and the rise of the Islamic Republic, Special Agent Tomogatsky read from her file.
If you already know, then why are you asking? I said. Karan, this will be easier if you cooperate. What is that supposed to mean? I asked. Your mother eventually settled in the Phoenix area and attended Arizona State, which is where she met your father, is that right? I shrugged. As far as I know, I wasn't around then. Your father is a Christian, is that right? Kind of, I said. He doesn't go to church or anything, but he was raised that way. And your mother is a Muslim? I glowed at her. It's a free country, I said, even though I wasn't feeling so free right now. Please answer the question. Yes, my mom was raised Muslim, I said wearily. But she isn't anything anymore. None of my family are. We don't go to church or mosque or anything. My mom was born in Iran, but she became a U.S. citizen after she moved here. My dad is American. I was born in America. Darius was born in America. We're Americans. The only other country I've ever been to is Mexico on vacation. We're not terrorists or members of Al-Qaeda. Darius isn't a terrorist. Look, my mom is Shia. Al-Qaeda is Sunni. If Darius suddenly got religious when he didn't, he'd be in Shiite, not Sunni. Al-Qaeda wouldn't even want him. Unless they needed an American Muslim to be the poster boy for the jihad. I let out a long, frustrated breath and tried again. We have a code of honor we live by, Darius and me. He's a United States soldier taken prisoner and being forced to do things against his will. He told me there's a secret code in his videos. I've been trying to tell you guys that. A code of honor, secret codes, lots of codes. Special Agent Tukotsky, flipping pages in her folder. Alright, let's talk about the secret code then. Chapter 18. Finally, I told her everything I told the other agent on the phone, about Rostam and how Darius and I used to make up adventures, and the Sith Lord reference, and what I thought it meant. There are others too, in the newer videos, references to the games we used to play together. I just don't know what they mean yet. The man behind Special Agent Tukotsky stirred, his eyes going to her. He looked like he was going to say something, but she went on. Do these games you played as children have anything to do with this? She asked. She pulled a glossy photograph from the folder and pushed it toward on the table. I gaped at it. It was a picture of the code of honor Darius and I had written up as kids. The same code of honor I dug out of the stuff from Darius's desk a few days ago. The DHS had taken pictures of it, given it an evidence number. Evidence of what? Yeah, I said at last. Darius and I made this up. It's the code of honor our hero Rostam lived by in our stories. A code of honor you and your brother also lived by, is that correct? That's what you just told me. Kind of, yeah. I mean, they're good rules for living your life. Special Agent Tukotsky nodded. Be strong, be brave, tell the truth, she said, skimming the list. Be loyal, she paused. Loyal to whom? What? Loyal to whom? She asked again. It says be loyal, but it doesn't say to whom you should be loyal to. I shrugged. Your friends, I guess, your family, your country, your faith? Sure, I guess. Where was she going with this? Be loyal, never give up, kill all monsters. She paused. What monsters? What did this have to do with anything? Dragons, demons, vampires, ninjas, Sauron, the Joker, Voldemort, Darth Vader, stupid stuff. We were kids. We made that when we were like 5. Special Agent Tukotsky clasped her hands in front of her again. So this wasn't about killing real monsters then, she said. I laughed. Maybe you haven't noticed, but there aren't real monsters. Aren't there? She asked, dead serious. Some people call the United States government monsters. Yeah, I said, slumping back in my chair as far as my handcuffs would let me. I'm thinking maybe they're right. The man beside Special Agent Tukotsky sat up straighter. When he spoke, his soft voice laced with an Irish lit. Whoa now, listen son, I don't think you should. Are you familiar with the Persian legend of 7 labors of Rostam Kamran? Special Agent Tukotsky asked me, cutting off her partner. He slouched back in his chair. Sure, I said. My mom used to tell me those stories. So Darius would have been familiar with them too? Sure. Special Agent Tukotsky read from her file. Rostam fights beasts, dragons, demons. Those the kind of monsters you and your brother swore to kill? Yeah, I guess. I don't see what... What's the last of Rustam's 7 labors, Kamran? Do you remember? He kills the white demon and slays the king. Special Agent Togotsky nodded. There are some scholars who believe the last story is a metaphor, that it's really about the struggle between the Persian and invaders from the north, white invaders. That Rostam is a hero in Iran because he fought the white invaders who meant to conquer his kingdom and won. I saw where she was going with this, but it was crazy. But we never thought of it that way. The white demon was just a giant wizard. He was Voldemort, or Grop rolled into one. He didn't represent any white invaders or anything to us. We were kids. But now you're not, Special Agent Tomogatsky said. So you're saying, what, that Darius thinks Americans are monsters he has to kill because he signed up some made-up code of honor in middle school? That doesn't make any sense. Why would he hate America? He joined the U.S. Army. He's a ranger. Let's talk about Darius, Special Agent Togotsky said. She flipped to another part of her folder, and I sank lower in my chair. I was starting to really hate that folder. Straight A's in high school, varsity football, strong SAT scores, West Point, volunteered for the Army Rangers, made captain before the age of 25, all very impressive. Just as impressive as your record so far, Kamran. Almost identical, trying to follow in his footsteps. That was a loaded question, and we both knew it. Yes, I was following in Darius' footsteps, but I thought he was an American hero, and she thought he was a terrorist. I didn't answer, and she went on. During his senior year, Darius spent a week in Washington, D.C. Strange place for a 17-year-old boy to go on spring break. What did he do while he was there? I don't know. I vaguely remembered that Darius had taken a road trip with some of his friends. From the photos on Facebook, it looked like they had a lot of fun. Visited the White House, took pictures, did touristy stuff. Not conduct Renaissance for El Quara? Conduct? No! Special Agent Togotsky turned the page. Tell me about the incidents when you were younger, when the 2 boys who lived on the street called you names. I couldn't believe it. How in the world had the Department of Homeland Security heard about that? Somebody who lived on our street must have told them. Maybe Ben and Steve themselves. Which meant they interviewed all my neighbors, trying to dig up dirt on us. What was she going to ask me about next? The whole arena I rolled a neighbor's house with toilet paper? Kamran? I shook my head. It was nothing. These 2 kids called me names. They didn't even know what they were saying. And how did your brother react? He was angry, wasn't he? Aha! Now I understood what she was getting at. Big bad Darius. Neighborhood terrorist. Yeah, he beat them up, I told her. There was no point in lying about it. She obviously already knew the whole story. And 9/11? How did he react to that? I don't know, I was 3. But Darius would have been 11. That's a difficult time to suddenly have everybody look at you like you might be a terrorist. It's tough to have people look at you like a terrorist any time, I told her. Like right now, for example. The guy beside her tried to swallow a grin. Point for me. Special Agent Togotsky wasn't put off in the slightest. It must have been an impressionable time for him. I shrugged. Maybe it was. Maybe that's what made him to be a hero. A hero to whom? To the United States of America. In case you missed in your folder there, he's been fighting for freedom in Afghanistan for 3 years. Darius is an American hero. Darius Smith had been seen on film training Al-Qaeda militaries and is responsible for the deaths of 53 people at the U.S. Embassy in Turkey, including 22 civilians. He also stood by and watched while an American journalist was beheaded yesterday. My face got hot. I lurched forward, the handcuffs clinking with the head attached to the table. He didn't do any of that, not on purpose. He is a prisoner. They're just making it look like, why would Darius throw everything away? Special Agent Tomogatsky cut in. What would make him want to abandon his friends, his family, his country? I sat back and glared at her. I had already told her the truth. She just didn't want to hear it. Did you know that Darius is a devout Muslim, Kamran? I told you already he isn't. She slid another photo from her folder of hers. Do you know what this is? She asked. It was a picture of a string of black wooden beads and a tassel on the end of it. It's a string of beads, I told her. It's a mizbaha, she said. A string of prayer beads. Muslims use these to keep count on their prayers. We found this in your brother's apartment. I frowned. Why would Darius have prayer beads? He's not religious, I told her. Special Agent Tomogatsky slid more papers in front of me, printouts of websites. Our search on your brother's computer says otherwise. Somebody found his computer's IP address, has been asking for a ruling on questions of Islamic law in an outline forum under the name Rostam90. Is it still forbidden to shave my beard if my job requires it? Can I go to parties where alcohol is being served even if I don't drink? Is it presumable to pray in my army boots? I stared at the printouts. Rostam90 had to be Darius. He was born in 1990. Had Darius really become a Muslim? And if he had, did he even mean anything? I'll ask you again, Kamran, Special Agent Tomogatsky said. Loyal to whom? Chapter 19. I sat on the bed in the little holding cell that had made my new home, thinking about Darius. He was all I thought about now, and all I talked about. I had been here, wherever here was, for over a week now. Every day was the same. Wake up in the cell, have some stale cereal brought to me for breakfast, and then be taken to the interrogation room down the hall. Special Agent Tomogatsky and the silent, nameless guy who would meet me there with a folder full of papers, and would go on everything again. Or she would bring up some new part of Darius's life and spin it, making it sound like just another reason for him to become a terrorist, and their explanation how he turned a traitor and joined Al-Qaeda. Then I'd be brought back to my cell for lunch, and sometimes I'd be taken back to the interrogation room in the afternoon to go over it again with two different people. I still hadn't seen my parents. I had no idea if they were even in the same building, and I still had no idea if I was ever going to get out of there, or what was happening with Darius. Day after day, I argued with Special Agent Tomogatsky and the others, telling them that Darius wasn't a terrorist, but after a week of hearing why he might be one, I was beginning to wonder, to doubt, and I hated myself for doubting. I felt like I was betraying Darius for even thinking it. But what if Darius had betrayed me? What if Darius had betrayed everyone and everything he loved? What if Darius had never really loved any of us to begin with? What if he had been pretending all that time, playing the part of all-American son, getting straight A's and playing football and joining the army, always with the plan to get to Afghanistan and to run Al-Qaeda, where he could be at last himself? Finally, let the real Darius come through. I stood and kicked that flimsy wooden bed. I hated doubting Darius. I hated that Darius had ever given me reason to doubt, and I hated Darius for getting into trouble like this in the first place. We would all have been better off if he died in Afghanistan. No, I couldn't think that. I'd never think that. I didn't want Darius dead. I wanted him alive and back home and proven innocent. But what if he wasn't innocent? Special Agent Tomogatsky certainly didn't think he was. She had him pegged for a terrorist from age 11, maybe even earlier. Was Darius still mad at Ben and Steve Hollins of the world? Did he hate all the haters? Had they called him monster? With all the looks, with his whispers, and his prejudice so often that he finally decided to become what he said he was? And the codes, the secret codes I kept trying to tell them about. Was I just imagining things? Maybe my brother had really gone insane. Maybe he was just mixing up the real legends of Rostam and the stuff we made up as kids. I sat down on my bed again. I felt like I didn't know anything anymore, least of my brother. Someone knocked on the door like they did when they were bringing me food or taking me to the interrogation room, but it was late. My dinner tray had already been taken away, and they never came for me after dinner. I took a deep breath. What did they want from me now?